This is Patrick Murphy-Racey. I'm a Sony artisan, and I'm here to talk to you about the brand new Firmware 5.0 made specifically for the Sony A9 camera body. But first, I want to do a little history. I know you guys hate it when I do that, but that's what I'm going to do. This is the Canon 1D Mark III. It came after the 1D Mark IIN, and before that there was a 1D Mark II, and before that there was the 1D. After the 1D Mark III came the 1D Mark IV, then came the 1DX, and then came the 1DX Mark II, and now kind of the Canon people, those that are still shooting Canon, are waiting for the 1DX Mark III. Here's a problem. This camera is a mechanical beast. This camera will not have functionality beyond what its original intent and design was. This is going to be locked into this state forever. Okay? This is the Sony A9. It's mostly solid state. The only thing mechanical on it is the shutter release button, for me the back button focus button, and the sensor which moves inside to reduce vibration. Other than that, there's no moving parts. It's solid state. Version 5.0 brings the A9 into all kinds of new user features. Sports photographers are well trained by the big two. We have been buying 3 of the pro camera of the day for years. I bought 3 1Ds. I bought 3 1D Mark IIs, 3 1D Mark IINs, 3 1D Mark IIIs, 3 1D Mark IVs. And then at that point, I got a 1DX and thought I can make these 4s work for a while. And then I got an A6000, and then I got an A6300, and then an A65. Anyway, that's when my Sony journey began. The reason why this is important is most professional sports photographers, really pretty much, if you want to keep up with the Joneses, you change out 3 camera bodies, 3 pro bodies, $5 grand a piece, $15,000 every 4 to 5 years. It's no wonder sports photographers don't have any money. The Sony A9 is going to do that upgrade between D3 and D3S, between D3S and D4, between D4 and D4S, etc. It's going to do that with a firmware upgrade. That's it. You're going to hook your computer up to your camera, plug the cord in, follow the directions, and you're going to have a new camera, just like that. There are over 20 new features, options, and additions to the existing firmware. For example, you can now not just lock your images, but you can rate them as well, just like on the A7 III and the A7R III. On the EyeAF feature, you can now select left eye, right eye, or automatic, where it will automatically sense which eye is closest to the camera. You're going to find that EyeAF in general is much more sticky and improved. It really locks on even in low light. Face detection also works a lot better than it did before, and the thing of it is, it worked great before. One of the cool things people probably won't talk about much is the A9 is capable of now shooting the proportion 1:1, which is going to be huge for Instagram people because they can now shoot 20 frames a second in square. Every time the engineers come around, we tell them what you tell us to fix the menus. Well, they're working on that. They have now included a graphic representation of all the buttons on the bottom and top of the camera, so it's much easier to do custom key settings. You don't have to know what the names of the keys are. You just look at the picture and the graphic and then set it to what you want. It's pretty sweet. As a primarily JPEG shooter, I'm excited about the improvements in the quality and the efficiency of the JPEG that is going to be produced by the A9 with the 5.0 upgrade. The camera's even better than it was before in low light, especially regarding skin tones, and overall the auto white balance color is much more accurate, which will mean you have to dig through those menus less than you ever did before. One of the things many people have been begging Sony for is to change the way the card slots work, and so now you can actually make it where you can shoot on card 1 until card 1 fills and then automatically go to 2, where your second card will start filling. You can separate your JPEGs and your RAWs, one card slot to the other. You can do video on one card and stills on the other card, whatever you want to do. All the combinations are there. One major improvement for people like me that shoot on strobes all the time, we spend a lot of time in setting effect on, is that you can now shoot all the way down to f16 and retain AF continuous focus instead of f11 as it was prior. If you shoot a lot of video and you like manual focus glass, you're going to find that there's a new focus peaking color, which is now blue. The electronic sensor cleaning feature of the A9 seems to me to be a little bit more violent, which is good because it's going to have a better chance of knocking that dust off that sweet sensor. Okay, this is not a complete list. Like I said, there's like over 20 different items that have been changed and improved or added. But now what I want to do is get into the really big stuff, the really big change in the way that you're going to operate the camera. There's a new autofocus setting. I call it the SpiderMonkey setting because it acts like a spider monkey. Now, what do I mean by that? Let me explain. All the modern cameras that we have, all the way back to the A6000, the A99, all those cameras have essentially 6 different autofocus areas you can choose from. You have wide area, zone, center, flexible spot, lock-on flexible spot, and the 6th one is called lock-on expand flexible spot. Now, Sony might not be good at naming things, but all these modes really work in different situations really well for what you want to do. My favorite autofocus mode is the wide area mode, but as a sports photographer, I cannot use that to shoot, for instance, football or basketball, field hockey, lacrosse, soccer. It just doesn't work. There's too many bodies running around. It'll pick up the one that's closest to me, and then my focus is off of where I really want it to be. I spent the last 2 years shooting the A9 primarily in flexible spot medium. But with this new software update, this new firmware that's coming in 5.0, you can use the SpiderMonkey setting. So in order to understand what the SpiderMonkey setting does, let's talk briefly about what the A9 is capable of doing right now before the 5.0 update. The way the A9 figures out how to be in focus is with these things. Number one is distance. So the camera can sense distance. The camera is also motion sensitive. So the sensor, the individual autofocus points are basically motion sensitive. So they can sense motion and they start focusing on what moves. You've got distance, you've got motion, you have face detection, then you have EyeAF, and finally you have color. If you have face detection turned on and EyeAF turned on, then all these things are in play when you're using the A9 right now. But what happens in 5.0 is we get pattern included into that. So as an example, in the current setting 4.1 on the A9 and all the other cameras, by the way, when I shoot portraits, I choose wide area autofocus. The second thing I do is I turn on face detection. I want it to know where that face is anywhere in the viewfinder. And last, I set the AEL button, I retast that button, I reprogram it to do EyeAF. And so what happens is when I'm in a portrait situation, I push and hold down the AEL button, and I'm telling the camera that I want to achieve EyeAF. If for some reason the camera cannot give me EyeAF, it drops back into face detect automatically. And finally, if it can't do that, it goes into wide area autofocus and it just tracks the subject until maybe they turn around and face me again. So if you're shooting people dancing or something like that at a wedding reception and you're trying to use EyeAF, that's what's happening. And so I like this setting. It's a triple threat because I can do EyeAF, I can do face detection, and last it'll go down to the wide area setting. So when the 5.0 software adds pattern and color to these other settings, it means that now the camera is really truly doing additional processing. It's looking at body type, height, it's looking at hair, it's looking at the shape of a face, it's looking at everything. It's looking at your clothing. If there's logos or patterns in your clothing, it's keeping track of all that as well. So how do we find this SpiderMonkey setting? Once you upload the new firmware into the A9, you'll go all the way down to the bottom where it says Lock on Expand Flexible Spot. And what you're going to see is a new feature that says Tracking. Now what's cool about this tracking feature is it will allow you to actually go into all the former autofocus areas as well. So you can do tracking mode in wide area, for instance, or in zone, or in flexible spot, or center, or whatever you want. You just keep clicking to the right and it will give you all the different options that are available. The SpiderMonkey setting is actually called Tracking Expand Flexible Spot. That is the one to check out. It will blow your mind and make your pictures pretty sweet. So what happens is there's a new icon in the viewfinder when you activate this. Once you activate real-time tracking, you will simply point the camera at the subject that you want. It doesn't have to be a person, but it works great on people. You push that button down halfway on the shutter release, and it will begin to track that person. Now, that person can go anywhere in the viewfinder, and there can be all kinds of people in that same room, and it won't matter. It'll just track them. Now, for me as a sports photographer, I don't want it to be on all the time. I want to turn it on and off instantly. So Sony afforded me yet another really neat opportunity. Last week I got to fly out to Los Angeles and I got to work with Brian Smith, one of the original artisans, and the two of us kind of set about how to kind of figure this SpiderMonkey setting out. Now, obviously Sony doesn't call it SpiderMonkey, that's me, but it acts like a SpiderMonkey, I swear. So anyway, what we did is we went to a boxing gym, and the very first thing we did is we started shooting portraits. We wanted to see how this real-time tracking feature would work for moving subjects, in fact, athletes that are very fast and quick. So we first set about doing portraits, and then later we moved into the boxing ring. The first thing I did is I brought Sherry, our model, workout room, and where all these weight machines were. I painted the wall red with a strobe, and I used another strobe to light her up. And then I began to have her wrap and unwrap her hands in front of me. So on purpose, I put not just her hands, but these yellow wrappings between myself and her. So basically, the camera had to look through her moving hands that were constantly moving back and forth in front of her face and her eyes, and also the wrappings, the ace bandage things. These things were constantly in the way and hanging and flipping around this way and that. And I mean, I could not get the A9 to come off those eyes. The A9 knew where her face was at all times, and it knew where her eyes were. And it kept her eyes sharp throughout the entire shoot. I was blown away. After we finished with that, I went in and did more of a kind of a real setup with the boxers in a ring. And yeah, we did light a little bit just to make it look cool, but basically we got them in there, and they were basically acting like they were sparring, kind of faux sparring. And the movement was very quick, very fast. And the camera, because it could sense color and pattern, in addition to height and body type, face detection, EyeAF, distance, and motion, all those things are coming into play. It could actually, as the fighters spun around each other in the ring, sparring, it would actually track the one I wanted. Occasionally it would come off, but it was pretty unusual. I would say in the 90% range. It was it was remarkable. There was so little I had to do, and even if I could only see part of a face, and in fact only one eye, the A9 kept that eye sharp, even though all hell was breaking loose in that ring, and it was violent action that we were shooting. It was really cool. Tracking Expand Flexible Spot is just sick. It works so well. It's scary, actually. And so the A9 has now become a new sort of rebirth. It's been reborn, literally, with this 5.0 update. You take the speed it already had, and now you equip it with this artificial intelligence, so speed plus AI, and you end up with this amazing tool, very powerful tool for visual people. So this March, the A9 becomes even more of a devastating and deadly weapon for sports photography and anybody who shoots action of any kind. Whether you shoot sports action, weddings, portraits, whatever you do, if it involves movement, the A9 is going to really help you here. The A9's initial value when it came out in March of 2017 was great, but now it's even more valuable. For those of you that are very accustomed to face detect autofocus and have been using EyeAF for a long time, I want to give you kind of a little bit of a warning here. Once you enter the SpiderMonkey mode, you're not going to see the little tiny square on the eyeballs anymore. It's going to be active and it's going to work, but that one square is still going to remain on the body. It'll float around the viewfinder as the subject moves, or as you pan left to right or up or down, but it's going to be doing EyeAF and face detection in the background. All you have to do is point the A9 at what you want and activate that mode. and it's going to do the rest. Here's what's really crazy though. Not only does this new autofocus mode help you with still photography, it actually still works in video. If you shoot a lot of video, you can start to imagine the possibilities. It's an incredibly new, powerful tool that has no equal or peer. So what would you expect to pay for this firmware upgrade that's going to basically give you a new A9, an A9 renewed, reborn? It costs nothing. And nor will the new app that's coming out as a professional companion to the A9 cost you anything either. So the new app is free, and the 5.0 firmware upgrade is free. All right, now as a parting thought about the A9 5.0 firmware update, I want to say this. Sony has not breathed one word about an A9 II body, a replacement for the A9. But the Olympics are coming. 2020 is just around the corner. It's next year, in fact. So I think what's happening here, and this is guesswork on my part, I think that they are tinkering with the A9 II right now. And I think this just trickled backwards into the original A9. But I'm so glad that Sony is so forward-thinking that they want to add value to a product that they've already had out. Sony's not in the business of one and done, and you're stuck, like I've been all my life with Canon and Nikon. Sony's solid-state kind of cameras and the way that everything is centered on the sensor, it just makes sense. It makes physical sense. It makes sense for carrying lightweight stuff around, but mostly it makes fiscal sense because they're going to keep adding value to these cameras even as they get older. I just love that. So I'm Patrick Murphy-Racey, Sony Artisan. Thanks for your patience and watching this video. Enjoy, and I can't wait till March. Thank you.